Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today I have Dominic on the show. We're going to talk about what it's like to assist an adult with mental illness who is living in your home. Get you something to drink and get you a snack and come on back. Good morning, Dominic. How you doing, man?
I'm blessed. Thank you so much. Good morning to you too. Happy Saturday.
Yes, happy Saturday. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule on the weekend and just coming on the show. I know a lot of times people like myself, I just like to kind of have my weekend to myself and sleep in late if I could, but sometimes you gotta, just do some things to raise awareness and stuff. So I really appreciate this for you.
Absolutely.
All
I'm
right.
excited about this.
Yes, I could tell. I love it. I love it. So why don't we start with you just introducing yourself and we're going to just jump on in.
Sounds great. So my name is Dominic Feliciano. I'm a family support specialist in the Placer County area, contracted through AME. And so my position, I support loved ones, friends, family, and significant others who support a loved one who is either going through mental illness or substance use, and just helping them, guide them with not only resources. We do outreach, but also we do one-on-ones, and then we do support groups too. And so my position, in order to obtain my position, I had to have lived experience. So I'm a father of five, and out of my five kids, two of them had suffered from mental illness back in 2019. 2021 when COVID was going around, and during those times on that. One was at the age of 16, going to be 17. So we played an active role in her recovery. And then 6 months later, our 18-year-old son, who's our second oldest, was diagnosed with mental illness. And so we played a supportive role, which is that's a new transitioning role where you support someone because they're over the age of 18, and so they can make adult decisions by the state of California and the state laws on that. And so you play a supportive role in that. And so I had lived experience in both of those, playing that active role for their recovery, and then a supportive role in that recovery too. So, and then I just got certified through the state of California as a peer support. So now we could build through Medi-Cal, and there's a lot of training that goes involved on that through Placer Learns and through our lived experience, and then through the state too as well.
I absolutely love the way you answer this question. Dominic, you have so much passion about mental illness and mental health and the support and the resources. And it's just so obvious. It's so obvious. And one of the things I do like about you is you are very comfortable with telling your story. A lot of people are not. I've shared how in my own family, I have a brother and a sister who have, mental challenges, but my mom and the rest of the family, they kind of swept on the rug because of the stigma.
Right.
And I love the fact that you are passionate to share your story because it will help somebody. People that are listening to you speak, people that may watch this program, people that may hear you at work, or even in the grocery store, no matter where you are. I mean, I feel like you have a very powerful story to tell. And I really think it's going to bring change in people's lives. I really feel like that very strongly. When you talked about lived experience, that has kind of like a twofold meaning in the mental health world. That means that you could be a family member of someone that have a mental diagnosis, or the person themselves can also have a mental diagnosis. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to clear it up for folks who may be watching who may not be as skilled or educated as we are in
Mhm.
this particular topic. Um, One of the conversations you and I had, you kind of talked about that you and your wife both did not have mental illness in your family. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so when this situation came about, how did it affect you and how did it make you feel?
Yeah, that's a great question. Initially, just like any other parent, when the diagnosis came up for our daughter that she was diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenia, and it was through isolation through that time. Our daughter happens to be more introverted than some of our kids who are extroverted, which caused it to kind of start, you know, isolation causes the most, um, long term can cause paranoia, depression, things like that,
Yeah,
anxiety, those things. And so when that diagnosis came in, as parents, I think me and my wife initially took it super hard, and
right.
that's what most parents kind of do.
Hmm.
You start reflecting on a self-reflecting, going, what could I have done?
Hmm.
I could have prevented this, which in essence, that's a normal response for most parents on that if they've never had it in the family or any history of that. It's a
Yeah.
common um, realization on that of self-reflection. I think a lot of times too, the thing that we have to understand is we have to go beyond that. So we can self-reflect on those things, but the next step is, as I think what most parents have a trouble is understanding that and like diving into that, and how getting knowledge about that. And so the second thing that my wife and I did was, once we kind of did the self-reflecting, things like that, then we said, okay, let's tackle this, let's learn about this, so that way we can support our daughter in ways of learning. And so we come to realize that through her diagnosis, that it's common in that age bracket to have that diagnosis. I think it's coming up to like almost 67% that like in that age group can suffer, or that's when the trigger response of a diagnosis, mental health diagnosis, begins through either triggers or traumatic experience. My daughter's trigger was isolation, and it could
Yeah.
be as simple as that. It could be as simple as bullying. It could be as simple as those kind of things that they start self-reflecting on that and then spiraling down. And if it's not, treated, talked to about, or expressed, then it can cause into going into psychosis and things like that, and hearing thoughts and voices and other of nature on that. And so like once we realized that that was common and that was in the age group and there is nothing we could do to prevent that,
Yeah.
it could happen. Then we kind of took, as parents, we kind of took the relief a little bit off of ourselves. But
Hmm.
what we wanted to do after that is, not only after we learned about it, okay, so how do we support her in
Right.
this? And so that was the next step. And so one of the things that we started doing is just reading literature on, podcasts like this,
Yeah.
just really gathering as much information. We went to our local resources and our county for health and human services, grabbing brochures, flyers, things of that nature. But I would say the biggest thing that helped us kind of understand that and relieve that, there is a book called "I'm Not Sick, I Don't Need Help" by Xavier Amador. And
Hmm.
in that book, it talks about other types of ways of how to support a loved one who suffers through mental illness. And in that book, he talks about the LEAP method, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But that was a critical book for me and my wife to read in order to be able to support a loved one, because up until then, we just supported them like a normal teenager would. And that's great when you're raising them up, but when they have mental illness, you have to shift perspective,
Hmm.
you know. And sometimes when you're not equipped to knowledge on that, it's hard to shift the perspective, and you're still using old tools for new ways, and it doesn't work. And so instead you build this like friction, between you and and the person who was diagnosed with mental illness, which can cause, you know, either more trauma or frustration in the household. Because you know, to give my lived experience, you know, when somebody's going through mental illness, it doesn't just affect that one person, it affects the whole family on that.
That's exactly right. How old, and you may have said this is, and I may have missed this. How old were your daughter specifically when you guys found out that she had a mental illness?
Yeah, she was 16 going into the age of 17 on
Okay.
that. And she was a junior in high school. And then our son was 18 on that. He was just fresh 18, 6 months later. And that was a pivotal moment because she was a junior in high school going into her senior year, and just really like having a tough time on that, I believe. And, you know, with the whole COVID and situation where they were learning from home, you know, the only time she was getting out, because she was working at the time, was to go to work. And other than that, she was staying home. So she was spending a lot of time at home, you know, and I can't stress enough how much it is for kids to just get outside, get some fresh
Yeah.
air, get some activities. And if you're an introverted child, like schooling, that structure of schooling to be able to go out, you know, and go to school, those responsibilities that you have as a teenager build you life skills in general, you know,
Mhm.
because introverts naturally just want to, you know, stay home, not talk to people, things of that nature. So, you know, getting up and getting ready for school is a responsibility that you're teaching, instilling in them. Going to school, you know, being being in classes with different people, having to, you know, raise your hand and answer questions, you know, these are all like discomfort for introverted kids. But what they do is they build these skill sets on that, and they need that, you know, everyone needs that, including extroverted kids, but introverted as well. And so when you took that all away, it was really hard for for my daughter to be challenged on that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, especially on Zoom when they were doing the COVID, you didn't have to have your screen on, so there was really barely any participation, there was barely any um, responsibility or even accountability other than that, you know. And so that just triggered all of that. So, you know, I can emphasize more that, you know, getting outside activities, those things are just common that you need to like instill in a child to get out and get some stretch. And I know in a digital world that could be
Right.
easier said than done.
Right. Right. Were there any signs or symptoms that you or your wife noticed leading up, meaning, you know, from a child or early teenage years? Were there any signs or symptoms leading up to her diagnoses or leading up to you guys making a decision to go and get her, you know, some help that she needs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things we started noticing, um, you know, when COVID first started, she would come out, you know, it was just like school. She would get up, take a shower, get ready, come to the living room, open the laptop, the school laptop, start working, you know, getting ready. And slowly but surely, some of those things just started going away, you know.
Okay.
Then it was get up, don't shower, change, put something
Mhm.
on, and then come out to the living room. Then it was don't change, don't shower, just get up, come out to the living room. And then it slowly became just get up and just have your screen off and lay in bed, you know.
Yeah.
And then so that turned it, and then, you know, the whole thing of like not showering became like, instead of just for the day, it started becoming 2 days, started
Yeah.
becoming 3 days, staying in the room all day, you know, and just coming out just to eat something or use the restroom, you know.
Yeah.
These were all slow signs that we started seeing like digression on that. She would only come out to go to work, but she was only working at the time 2 or 3 days a week, you know, 4 hour shifts part time. So these were all symptoms of that. When we really we started, those were like inclinings of like us kind of just observing and putting mental notes on. But when we really started noticing something was wrong is when uh, she would think something happened and something didn't happen,
Yeah.
or when she thought something was said. I remember a lot of times she said, did you say something? And I was like, no, I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And that's when like that's when the start of like voices. She was hearing voices
Mhm.
and and couldn't she couldn't decipher whether that was reality or in her head, her
Yeah.
thoughts. Um, and then from that point, it became lack of sleep, and sleep is pivotal. I know
Mm.
everyone talks about like you know, working as hard as you can, but you need rest. I'm just reading a book right now called Limitless, and it's
Yeah.
talking about how to expand your mind and brains and things like that. But in the book, Limitless by Jim Quick, it talks about how when you're up, your brain produces this fluid throughout your day and stuff like that. And so this fluid, it comes in, it starts into foaming up in your fluid. And I don't know what the key term for it, but when you sleep, your brain acts as a like a cleaning machine, and it cleans all that foam around, you know, to start your day on. If you have access buildup on that pursuing, you know, keep going, it shows signs of like dementia over time and things like that, and that foam kind of starts eating away at brain cells and brain neurons and things like that. And so like sleep is super required in order to like, it's like refresh and restarting everything from your muscles to your brain to
Mhm.
everything like that. And so so the lack of sleep, she would go maybe 2 or 3 hours, and then there were one night that she was up all night. I got up for work and she was all still up on her phone in the living
Yeah.
room, and I was like, hey, you need to go to bed, you know, like it's
Yeah.
tomorrow today. Like, you
Yeah.
know, but those were just signs. And the the less that she slept, the more um, the voices started getting real and
Yeah.
very loud and prominent, and to the point where we knew something was wrong when she was talking to herself. She
Yeah.
would turn and talk to herself, and I said,
Yeah.
"Who are you talking to?" And she would say, "No one."
Yeah.
And you know, she couldn't decipher the difference.
Yeah.
And then that's when we knew, like, hey, we need to get this checked out. And that was kind of the one of the pivotal moments. But I think moment the last moment of everything was we were sleeping one night, and she was just scared. She was just
Yeah.
scared. She came into our room and she was pacing back and forth, and she was like, I'm so scared. Like, and then we got up right then and there, and we took her to the emergency room, and then that was the process on that. And so um to the process of starting getting help. So there were telltale signs looking back at that, what
Yeah.
transpired to that. We were not equipped back then the first time. So when our son had it, we were more aware and
Hmm.
more proactive into
Hmm.
his diagnosis and to get treatment for him as well too.
Yeah. I so the reason why I asked you to share about your daughter specifically, because folks who watch this, I want them to have an idea of what to potentially look for, and not overlook things that may seem abnormal or have abnormal behavior. You know
Absolutely.
what I'm saying? And I love the fact that you and your wife was proactive, when you guys found out and got her the help that she need. Talk a little bit about your son's diagnosis, if you're okay with that. Like, what is his diagnosis, and what did you guys see, that caused you guys to, get him the help that he needed?
Yeah, so that was a different story. So it was a little bit different, but so our son had just graduated high school,
Okay.
and at the time he was an introverted person, and so our son had gone through like kind of a tough breakup,
Yeah.
which was really tough for him because this was a person that was really close to him, is
Yeah.
one of really fresh, but one of his first girlfriends that were like very serious. They were very
Yeah.
serious and committed for 2 years. And so as an introverted, you know, child too, out of, it's funny, I have 5 kids. Those were my daughter and my son, who were diagnosed, were the two introverted out of all the children on that.
Wow.
Um, so it's kind of interesting when you look at that perspective on that, and it really just makes a difference on that too sometimes. But so his diagnosis, so he was really hurt from that from that breakup. And so he started self-medicating actually.
Okay.
And so he went online and he purchased what's called a 219 card, which is a miracle marijuana. So he could, basically self, medicate.
Yeah.
And so we were unaware of that as parents, but it's very easy to obtain one,
Yeah.
online, and it's inexpensive for $99, and you could just boop and get one. And so he started self-medicating himself, and so he started doing it so much that he put himself in a chemical psychosis, um,
Oh, wow.
where he was diagnosed with a chemical psychosis through bipolar and schizophrenia on that too. But his was very different because he was self-medicating with marijuana or cannabis. Um, he put himself in a chemical psychosis, so he wasn't sleeping. He was not sleeping at all, and it only took a matter of 3 or 4 days of not sleeping, and maybe an hour or two, and his personality totally changed. He
Wow.
went from like a really introverted child to very outgoing, like overnight. And
Wow.
he was repeating himself. He was writing notes on a pad. Um, then he started putting sticky notes on the wall. Um, sticky notes would read like, "I hope I can sleep," or "What's my brain telling me?" or "How do I answer this question?" There were like questions to him that he was thinking, and they were all over his room. And so we knew something was up very quickly because he was a different person. And I
Right.
think the biggest thing that ended up, and this is kind of a like a not a sensitive topic, but like it's not that great to hear. But so he was in his psychosis where he wasn't sleeping, he was hearing voices, things like that. I was at work one day, and my wife was with him, and our daughter had just gotten out of the mental hospital, and she had been here for a minute. But he was in the kitchen, and he grabbed a knife, like one of our butcher cutting knives, and he's like, "I wonder if I do this to me." And my wife saw him, and she
Yeah.
was just like, "Gabriel," or "Put the knife down," like. Um, and so he did, and then immediately took him to emergency
Yeah.
room. And it was one of those things like, um, it was a scary moment. And
Yeah.
next thing you know, I get a phone call saying, "Hey, we're at the ER. Um, I don't know what's going on, but he's not in the right mind." And I went to work, and they handled that, and then they started that process too. So it was a different type of process, a more scarier process, a little bit, but at the same time too, the difference is that because he was 18 years old, we didn't really get to like be active in his recovery, like even
Yeah.
setting an ROI, which
Yeah.
means release of information.
Hmm.
We were still limited to the information that we had. I mean, I'm thankful that some of the nurses could tell that we were a supporting family that was
Hmm.
allowing them to do the thing. So we were able to, converse with some nurses.
Yeah.
But for the most part, um, it was really limited on where he was going, the treatment, things of that nature. And so it wasn't until he was sent off, and he was able to call us or talk to us, that we were knew where he was at, and we could really just talk to him on a video screen to like, see what's going on that too. So, but yeah, a whole different atmosphere that was actually scary as parents.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that we went through that, and that actually happens now more often in people and family and loved ones than they understand too. So yeah, that was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you talking about your wife a lot throughout your story. And I know who she is, very, 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 very strong Christian individual.
Yes.
You know, good lady, good girl.
Yeah.
How different would that have been for either one of you? Since I'm interviewing you, I'm just going to focus on you.
Yeah.
How different would that have been, or challenging would that have been for you if you would have had the kids and would have been a single father without your wife. You know, your wife, her strength, her support, without that piece being in your life, tackling this situation, how difficult would that have been for you?
Yeah, I think that would have been a lot different. There's
Yeah.
just so many, there is so many things that you know, like I always tell people, it takes a village to raise
Yes.
children. It takes a village, you know.
Hmm.
And you know, when you are, you know, dealing with, you know, being a single parent, you know, like my dad was a single parent, and so I was raised by a single father,
Yeah.
my sister and I. So there's elements that you miss out on, that the children miss out on,
Yeah.
that there's things that I, as a wife, that I couldn't teach my kids. My wife has definitely, she's a woman of strength,
Yeah.
and a strong woman, and definitely she's brought a lot of peace, calm. You
Hmm.
know, because you know, as men, we can get emotionally driven, and she has that nurturing. There's that nurturing side of her,
Yeah.
that even I'm like trying to channel into, but
Yeah.
it takes me being like intentional, where
Yeah.
to her it comes supernatural, you know.
Yes.
And so that effect, if you're a single parent, can just affect um you greatly, because there's just senses that ladies have towards children, and understanding on that we don't have as
Uh-huh.
gentlemen. And so I'm really fortunate that we have two in the household on that, but it
Yeah.
can be difficult, if not one, but not impossible. I
Right.
always tell people, if you're a single parent and you're doing the best you can, you're a hero on that, because like you're filling in both positions the best that you can. But it does take resources. So like, make sure that you are, you know, are in tied with family members or loved ones or support groups or anything else that you can feel like building that relationship. And how do you build that relationship? You just go out, you go to the community, you go to churches, you wherever you're at, and
Mhm.
start building and connecting in relationships and building connection with people, so that way you have the resources and sources available to help on that too. Maybe the YMCA, maybe it's the boys clubs, maybe there are other things, maybe it's school activities, but like, try to, as the best as you can, bringing up that if you're a male, bring that female role model into your children's life. You know, a positive female role
Mhm.
model, a positive male role model into their life, in all aspects, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a PE teacher,
Yeah.
maybe it's martial arts. My dad, we grew up doing martial arts, so I know that my father was the only father figure in some of the students' life, you know,
Wow.
as a positive, because there were single moms that were taking their sons to martial arts school because they were just wild upset, you know, and you know, and that discipline in martial arts kind of just like leveled them off. But they had that male figure, and they would come to my dad, and they would you know, he got in trouble in school, you know, this is what he did. And you know, my dad did the instructor discipline kind of style on that. And you know, but it was just like, it was really great for the moms, single moms, because they could be like, I'm going to tell Mr. Feliciano, you know, and they're just like,
Yeah.
oh, you know. So like, it just gave that support, you know, of that male role model that was missing in some of those kids' life too. So so like, that's if I could say that, that would be the best thing. But I know that that would be a struggle for me if I didn't have my support person, my partner in crime, and my wife, because we balance each other very equally.
Hmm. I wanted to bring that out too because I wanted I, once again when people watch this particular segment, I want people to know, like you kind of talked about, what it takes a village to raise a child,
Mhm.
and my saying is many hands make a heavy load light,
Yeah.
and sometimes when you have folks in the home, whether it be a spouse or another sibling or on a cousin, a lot of times they may not have the same understanding or passion
Right.
regarding mental health, and they tend to step back and let the person who wants to dive in and help kind of
Right.
put it all on their shoulders.
Right.
And so I wanted to highlight that when you, or if you have two people, you could conquer more together
Right.
regarding this situation right here. So that's what I was trying to pull out, and what you
Yeah.
did a good job at explaining it too.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
So, um, I want to know, like, what's it like now? You know, I'm assuming both of them are adults.
Hmm.
Are they living at home?
Yeah. So
Okay.
currently, so
So
currently,
what's it like now for
yeah,
each one?
absolutely. Thank you. So absolutely. So currently, right now, both of them do live at home, right now, and they're actually on the road to the recovery. So our daughter was taking medication, who's no longer taking the psych medication anymore. She
Awesome.
does have, and they weaned it down. It took, this took a matter of a year or two to kind of go to the doses down, but they were taking therapy, psychiatry, medication. And so their recovery is really great, for my daughter, because we got to play that active role on that when she was younger. So we were really, supportive. But the biggest thing I like to tell people is, like, if you're supporting a loved one, like, you are gonna have to change, like, things in your household to support that loved one. And
Yeah.
so a lot of things, one of the first things that my wife and I did in order for them to recover, or to have the support that they needed, is we changed our employment.
Yeah.
I went from a job that was working 80 hours a week, so I was hardly home. uh,
Yeah.
I drove an hour and a half to work, and an hour and a half, and I put a 12 or 14-hour day. And that's a true statement. 80 hours a week. People were like, no way. I was like, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every week it was 80 hours, 6 days a week. And I worked
Um,
for a company, yeah, that was long days, 5 a.m. to like almost 10 o'clock at night every day. And then I still
so,
had the 2-hour drives.
and I
Yeah.
think you mentioned that. What was it like? Were you doing like trucking or something?
Yeah. I worked for Brinks. So Brinks Armored Truck. So
Wow.
we delivered all the money and to casinos, every place. And
Wow.
so we had a start time at 5 a.m., but we had no end time. So once
Wow.
you get done delivering, you get done delivering, and then you still have to come back on that sometimes. So the only time they send you back is if you have it. There's like a transporting goal of like 16 hours. So, and so
Wow.
you had to like a drive time that you couldn't max over. But yeah, and we would come close to that every single day because there's just so
Wow.
many to do. But so yeah, so I changed that and started working a 40-hour week, a little bit closer on that, so I could be home, so I could be present, um, on that, because we had young teenagers and they all had vehicles at the time, so like we were like ships in the night.
Yeah.
And so, like, I wasn't really involved in each and every one of their, because I was always at work.
Right.
Another thing that we did is we started doing family meetings once a week for young teenagers and young adults who were still living in our house. And so, what those look like? What did the family meetings look like? So we would start with words of affirmation.
Yeah.
So each one of us would go around, and during the week we would do something nice for each one of our family members, and then we would get to express that. So, like, for instance, you couldn't use their, like, so I couldn't say, my son. I would say, hey, my son, I just want to say, I love you for being my son. Like, that's
Yeah.
not, you can't use that. It had to be something that was intentional. So, like,
Right.
hey, son, you worked at Jamba Juice and you brought me back a smoothie when you didn't have
Yeah.
to. I appreciate that. Something along that lines. Hey, you took the trash out. Hey, you washed dishes on my day to wash dishes. You grabbed me a smoothie. You paid for this. You something like that. You brought me back an energy drink, whatever it was. And we would
Yeah.
go to like each and every person in words of affirmation. It did one of two things. One, positivity. You're expressing positive things to your children and to
Yeah.
your spouse and your significant other. And number two, is you're thinking outside of yourself, because as young teenagers, I know myself as a teenager, I couldn't think about anyone else but me.
Right.
That was it.
Right.
That was just me, my life, my things. And so you have to be like super intentional about like doing something for somebody else, which hopefully that takes over time becomes a habit. And so you're thinking of others, you're learning that life skill of thinking of others, instead of being in a bubble of just
Yeah.
yourself. And then we would talk about our day, our work, our week, how our work week was. And as a parent, you have to be transparent with your children, because I think a lot of times they hold you to a really high standards. And if you're not going through things or struggling through things, They just think that you're just superhero and supermom and
Hmm.
never struggling. And so when they're struggling, it's hard to relate or even ask you what's going on.
Yes.
And because they can't come to you because they're like, oh, well, they never struggle. So they don't
Yes.
even know what it feels like. And that
Hmm.
literally, as a teenager, that's what you see, if they're never telling them, and I'm not saying going deep and trigger them, but I'm saying
Yeah.
like, hey, let me just tell you what's going on, like, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what, but like solution seeking. So my day was weak, my work week was great. I had this kind of issue with a client,
Hmm.
but we worked out, we positive through, or man, I was struggling, I wasn't able to make it to the gym today, and I've been slacking on that, but next week I'm gonna you know tough it up and start going, so my
Yeah.
work, I would give my week a 6 or an 8, or and then you measure it, so that way they could see where you're at on that, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest, and we'd all go around on that, and just so that would take place on that, and then we set weekly goals, because what we've noticed as young adults is um, if they're not self-motivated, they won't do anything, like they're
That's true.
so we have to set weekly goals of something that we're going to accomplish this week. It could
Yeah.
be as easy as I'm going to try to go to bed before midnight, or it could
Yeah.
be I'm going to start jumping rope when I work out, or
Yeah.
I'm going to stop drinking energy drinks for a week, or something to that effect,
Hmm.
and challenge that on that weekly goal. So our family weekly meetings have been a place where we could like come through and really focus and really like hone in on each other's week and really just check in. People do it on dinner time, people do it on different types, but our family meetings just works for us, for our household, on that, because everyone is just going every which way on that. And so just changing our jobs, family meeting, and then just being supportive on that too. Now
Hmm.
they're looking for new jobs right now so they can work full time, and increase their income, so that way they could start saving money and even possibly move out in the future. So they've been really great on like their recovery from that moment, just by those transitions and those changes that we've had in our household.
That's awesome. You know, it because one of the things you said when you talked about your son when his situation happened, you guys was kind of limited on receiving information because his age. How important is it, or can someone put something in place now, as like the, I don't know, conservator or guardian or whatever?
Mhm.
Is it possible to put something like that in place now, for someone who potentially may need some assistance from a loved one that's an adult, if that makes sense?
Yeah, there are possible ways on that. And depending on, I think the first and foremost is making sure that they do have help and resources.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can, like, the start of that, I always tell people step one is get an assessment.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not, like for instance, we took our both of our kids into the ER because we noticed abnormal things, scared, things like that. But if they're at the beginning stages, and you're like, I'm noticing these different things, I always encourage people to get an assessment through your county. Use those are free assessments, mental health assessments, and how that works is you can come into any, like, they have usually either appointment setting or different types of setting depending on the county that you live in.
Mm-hmm.
But you can come in, get an assessment by a clinician, a certified clinician, and what they do is they give you a rating score on that, a 1 through 10 rating
Mm-hmm.
score. If you score a 1 through 5, then you don't meet the criterias for that service for like ASOC or CSOC. If you score a 6 or higher, then you do meet criteria. But the great thing about that is they give you other resources if you don't meet criteria as well too, like a list of great resources available.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the next step on that. And I always say that's step one, and then the next step on that is being able to find resources the next to be able to help them out. And if they're distant on that and don't want to do that, or you support them, but if their mental state or their safety is being um, like is in danger, then maybe possibly looking into a conservativeship on that, and being able to guardians. I always tell people that that is not the first route to go,
Yeah.
because you're taking somebody's rights away before
Yeah.
you give them the opportunity to heal. And just know, like, any recovery has to be through self first before anything. So you can't force somebody to recover through mental
Hmm.
illness. You can't force somebody to recover through substance. So conservatives, I always say the conservatorship is the last resort on that. It should never be the first one. I think a lot of times people try to, because their significant other or loved one doesn't want to get the help, and it's like, oh, you don't want to get the help, well, I'm going to force you to get the help. No, we shift it first, we support them first, because they have really great intuition on themselves first, and they're
Yeah.
capable of recovering on that, but they need just the support end on that. I talked about the LEAP method, which means listen, empathize, agree, and partner. And those are the things like that you need to do in order to support somebody in that transition. I'll give you a great example. So our son, when he was diagnosed, he went to a treatment center, and then he got stabilized, and then he was released. And so he started taking medication, and orally.
Hmm.
Well, he started feeling fine and great, and so he stopped taking it. And next thing you know, psychosis and everything came back in, and he had all the symptoms again.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not right. And so I asked him, and I was like, hey, are you taking medication? And he's like, no, I haven't been really taking it. I've been forgetting, things like that. And so, we encouraged him, hey, I think, are you not sleeping again? This, doesn't seem healthy. What are your thoughts on that? And he's like, I don't like sleeping. I said, maybe it might be a possibility you might want to get checked out or anything like that. I could support you on that whenever you want to go and stuff like that. What's a good time? So you're just supporting them in that kind of way. So he went, and so he checked in again. He was 5250, and then he came back out after 14 days. And so they put him on an injectable. Well, um, I during that time before that injectable, there was a reason why he stopped taking the medication. And at first I wasn't realizing why he stopped taking the medication. I thought it was because he thought he felt fine.
Hmm.
But come to realize, you know, I hadn't unpacked why he stopped taking the medication. And
Yeah.
so, like, I asked him one day, why did you stop taking the medication? And he says, well, because the medication makes me feel sleepy, and
Mm.
and I've been adding weight. And he was always like a young kid, kind of chubby, and then he grew up to an adult, and he started working out, and he slimmed out,
Yeah.
and he looked really good. And then the medication started making him look heavy again, and so he stopped taking it because he didn't like the way he looked on that.
Yeah.
And that is a valid reason.
Yeah.
That's valid. Like, and so as a parent, if I was in that, most parents would be like, well, you got to take the medication because
Hmm.
it's helping you. But instead, you have to use the leap method. And so, like, the leap method with that would be something to say something like, yeah, that makes sense. I wouldn't want to take the medication if those things happen to me as well. And you're
Right.
not agreeing to not taking to the medication. You're agreeing to, like, those are valid reasons.
Yes.
So I told him, if we're able to find a medication that uh would stop you from sleeping all the time and stop you from, like, eating all the time, would you consider that medication? And he was like, well, yeah. And so we got to unpack that together, and then he was able to get on an injectable. And so, like, just those little efforts of just changing, like, and listening, empathizing,
Yeah.
agreeing, and partnering up, those four things in just that example right there, we were able to help them with resources. And so that book was really crucial for me to understand how to navigate and support a loved one through that. And so, you're not taking rights from them, you're
Right.
supporting them, and their valid reasons that what they have on that too. And
Yeah.
so that's one of many examples that transpired that actually helped to their recovery as well.
I love this story because you know you're not taking away their rights. You know what I'm saying? You're not taking away their rights, and you're having a conversation with them and giving them another alternative, and even allowing them to make the choice for this other alternative that you're presenting to them. And sometimes a lot of parents have a hard time with that because you know how it goes. Hey, I'm the parent, I'm the mother, I'm the father, you gotta do what I say. This gonna work. But I love that. I just like your approach to that.
Yeah.
And you know, and it just kind of empowers the individual, you know, to want to do what they can do for themselves in order to get in a better space. So I really like that. Um, no, you want to speak on that?
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of times when someone goes through mental illness or suffers on that, as parents, we think it's their deal. But when it comes down to it, like as a parent, you have to model change. And so you,
Yes,
in order to support them on that, you have to take that ownership and actually genuinely show that you're supporting them.
yes,
But if you're not genuinely supporting them and you're not changing too to support them, like your lifestyle, like
yeah,
mental illness from our kids changed us too.
yes.
It
Wow.
changed us for the better of supporting them. And
Yeah,
they needed to feel supported so they could overhurl. No one wakes up wanting to go through mental illness. It just
yeah.
happens. It's naturally, it happens. It's no, it's, I always say mental illness is just like a normal muscle. Your brain is a normal muscle. If it was injured, you would heal it and take it, you know. It's no
Yeah.
different than having back pain or anything like that too. But for some reason there's such a stigma on this. And so
Hmm.
like what people do is they push that that's your issue. I'll support you, but I don't want to change anything about me as a parent to
Yes.
support you. And
Yes.
that's when this happens a lot. And so, by learning, studying, reading up, and then supporting them and really genuinely supporting their recovery, knowing that they're more than just their diagnosis, that you're going to support them, challenge them, move them forward on that too, but in a healthy way. And they
Yeah.
feel like they have autonomy on their choices,
Hmm.
decisions, and responsibilities, but you're guiding them through that. That's, I felt, has been the best method to that. And it's a different approach than if you were raising a child through like just normal on that, where you could be tougher and more disciplinary and things like that, but it's a shift in approach, but you have to change yourself in order to support that loved one too.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. You should write a book. Have you thought about writing a book?
Possibly, I don't know, I'm not too sure. I've been enjoying just helping others on that and really just guiding people on that through our lived experience on that.
I think one day that's going to be in your future because you have um, you just have a presence about yourself. You have the way you deliver your words and the fact that you're not ashamed to tell your story. You got, I mean, I feel like this got a lot of information that's going to be beneficial to a lot of other people. You and your wife both.
So
That's going to benefit a lot of people once they continue to hear your story. So
absolutely, thank
do
you
you
so
feel like let me see, do you feel like your lived experience with your children, do you feel like that has equipped you in your role now at your current job?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it allowed me to get into the door, but now I'm so much more equipped because there's so much information, on that.
Yeah,
Like, so I've learned like how to like motivational interviewing, which is helping to navigate and pull out those questions and
yeah.
concerns of people.
Wow.
There's other methods that they have. There's, bias diagnoses, things of that nature that you learn and train and develop on that. But I think you have to have not only just the lived experience, but you have to have what I call is a growth mindset, meaning that you're an
Yeah,
open sponge, you're still learning, you're still growing, you're still developing yourself, versus the fixed mindset, which means like you've already know all the information, you've arrived. And I think as you currently, even outside of my profession, in my personal life, I continue to learn and develop and continue to read, not only for like just for my position, but just as a person,
yes,
I'm continuously growing. And so having that growth mindset has helped me to continue not only develop me as a family support specialist, but also as a person in society, normal society as well. So I continue having that eagerness to like grow myself and better myself. My wife just told me this morning, she's just like, I'm so proud of you because you're always like growing. You're like self-motivating myself from the gym to like always sitting down and reading. I read 15 minutes a day every single day. My
That's awesome.
downtime, I have a podcast of something that's going to be either motivational, inspiring, learning, developing, growing. And so like any of my downtime is like spent on self developing myself continuously because I want to be that example and that role model for my children and for coworkers and people around me, on that. And it just helps me in general. It helps me grow and develop. I don't want to get stagnant and have the fixed mindset. I want to continue always be learning and growing. I want to be that 90-year-old guy that is learning how to Dougie or all
Yeah.
those they just live life just great because they're just
Yeah.
like always growing and wanting to learn new things. So
Man, I'm telling you, I really feel like you're gonna do great things. I don't know. I sense that. I remember when I first met you, the very first time, literally the first time I met you,
yeah,
your first day at work,
yeah,
you came in, and I remember you had when you just see somebody new,
yeah,
and my first train of thought, my judgment of you or my perception of you was, okay, he's very professional. He looks to be extremely intelligent. Like it was just all good vibes, all good. And
thank
then as we, got a chance to know each other just shortly and stuff,
you.
I would thought to myself, like, okay, I discern right
Yeah,
in so many words and stuff. But I really, 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 really hope that you continue to share, man, your story, and really hope that God put people in your path that you can really, help in this mental health space, man, because it's not easy work. It's
yeah,
not, but we do need people like us in this field, regardless of what position or level we are at,
right,
to really do the work.
absolutely,
Because there's not a lot of people who got that type of support. They're just out here, and then when they do go to these resources for the staff who's working, behind these resources, sometimes they don't get what you're giving. They
right,
get, oh, okay, here's this, here's that, next. I mean,
right.
people need like personalized support, you
Right.
know.
I
So,
appreciate that. Absolutely. I think a lot of times we can get mundane in the work where we people can burn out, but
yeah,
having that passion for people and really, making people aware and really bringing this stigma to attention and really like debunking this thing because like
yes,
it's not going away, and we're just now scratching surfaces on just bringing those things. I mean, a decade ago, there was no family support specialist. There
yeah,
wasn't people who had lived experience. We only had the medical model, on that. So we only had psychiatry clinicians, you
right,
know, that one side on that. And just recently, we have the recovery side now, the recovery model. So now we have the medical model and the recovery model because they know that the lived experience can help
yeah,
people navigate those things. And through someone, and people appreciate, they feel like they can connect with people
yeah,
that have gone before them and have
yeah,
overcome or are in the process of recovery on that. And so like the more we speak about this, the more we tell our stories, the more we share this information and what we've learned as a community, as a society about mental illness, the less the stigma becomes and the more we can help people. Because I think a lot of times we're still restricted through people's culture,
yeah,
people's mindset, and through old ways that no longer work because times have changed. Old keys don't open new doors. And so
that's
you're going
right.
to learn new ways of opening up these doors now. And so until we get to that place on that, we're going to have to continuously keep talking about mental illness and making our presence known about that and what to do and the resources that are available on this. This is not something that is just uncommon. This is getting more common and more common and more common. But as soon as we can debunk this and tackle this on, people will be more aware, and it won't be such a um, taboo, for
Yes.
people, and we can give people the help that they need and have the resources available once it's more aware.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Well, we have run out of time. This is was I almost text you while we was doing the interview to tell you like, okay, you're killing it. You killing it. But this is definitely by far was one of the best shows I've done. And I really appreciate you like coming on and just really sharing a story and just really being transparent, most importantly, um, because once again, we don't always get this. Like for real, we don't. And I think for those who see this, um, I know they're going to get some substance out of this for sure. I do have an idea for another show. I ain't gonna say here. I'm gonna text you, um, and see if you'll be interested.
Okay.
Yeah, because we got good chemistry on doing this thing. So I really appreciate this, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm gonna reach out to you once again, man, and I
Okay.
thank you for coming on. And
Absolutely.
tell your wife, thank her once again, because she made the connection. She
Well,
definitely made the connection. So I really do appreciate that.
absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate that, and the time and the consideration for everyone who was here, putting this together over their weekend. So I appreciate that.
Okay, you're welcome. And that's it for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, if you would like to be a guest on our show, or if you would like a DVD copy of our show, please dial 916 366 4600. Thank you.